My name is Kendall Turner. I'm 63 years old, and until 6 months ago, I thought I understood the shape of my remaining years. Quiet, comfortable, perhaps a little lonely, but dignified. I'd worked hard for that dignity. 35 years as an accountant, the last 15 running my own small firm in Burlington, Vermont. I'd put aside enough to retire comfortably, bought myself a modest 2-bedroom house on a quiet street lined with sugar maples that blazed like fire every October. My life had a pleasant rhythm: morning walks by Lake Champlain, volunteer work at the community center teaching financial literacy, occasional dinners with the handful of friends who hadn't disappeared into their grandchildren's lives. And then there was Noah, my only child, 41 years old, with his father's sharp features and my stubborn chin. We'd never been especially close, not since his father left when he was 12. I'd been too busy working, making sure we didn't lose the house, making sure college remained possible. There wasn't time for the kind of mothering I'd wanted to do. By the time there was time, Noah had grown distant, wrapped up in his real estate career in Boston, his succession of glamorous girlfriends, his carefully curated social media presence. We spoke maybe once a month. Birthday cards, Christmas visits that grew shorter each year. I'd made peace with that, or thought I had. Then the call came last January. His voice sounded different, warmer than I'd heard in years. "Mom, I've been doing a lot of thinking," he said. "About family, about what matters." I should have recognized that tone. His father used the exact same one when he wanted something. But we believe what we want to believe, don't we? "I'm coming up to Burlington next weekend," he continued. "There's some things I want to talk about, face to face." When he arrived, he brought expensive wine and stories about his business troubles. The market was changing, he explained. He had overextended. There were opportunities, but he needed capital to bridge the gap. "What about your partners?" I asked. Noah had started his company with 2 college friends, expanding from residential flips to commercial properties across New England. "We're restructuring," he said vaguely. "It's complicated." He stayed 3 days, longer than any visit in the past decade. He asked about my health, commented on how well I was aging, helped with small repairs around the house. After dinner on the second night, he laid out his proposal. "Mom, I've been looking at your situation. You've got this house free and clear, good credit, substantial savings, but it's not working for you." "It's working fine," I said, confused. "No, from a tax perspective. You're exposed." He leaned forward, the kitchen light catching the silver at his temples. When had he started going gray? "I've been talking to some very smart financial advisors. There's a way to protect your assets and help me at the same time." The plan, as he explained it, was to put my house and his troubled properties into a family trust. He'd manage everything, generate income, and protect me from what he called predatory estate taxes. It would create a bridge for his business challenges and secure my retirement. "I don't know, Noah. It sounds complicated. That's why you have me," he said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. "Finance is what I do, Mom. Let me take care of you for once." For once. Those words pierced something in me. Isn't that what every mother secretly wants? To be taken care of, after decades of being the caretaker? "I'll think about it," I said. On the third day, he brought paperwork. Lots of it. Formation documents for a family limited liability company, transfer deeds, power of attorney forms. "This is moving very fast," I said. "The opportunity won't wait, Mom. My partners are pushing for a decision." I hesitated, staring at the stack of documents. I'd spent my career reviewing financial paperwork for clients. I should have insisted on reading every line, consulting my own attorney. Instead, I found myself watching my son's face, searching for the little boy who once brought me dandelion bouquets. "I need to review these properly," I said finally. Something flickered across his expression. Impatience? Worry? But then he smiled. "Of course. Take your time. I just need an answer by Friday." After he left, I sat at my kitchen table with the paperwork spread before me. By then, dawn had broken over the mountains to the east. I hadn't slept. Something felt wrong. Beyond just the rushed timeline and my son's sudden interest in my financial well-being, I called my old colleague, Patricia, who had specialized in estate planning before retirement. "Send me everything," she said after I explained. "And don't sign a damn thing until I look it over." 2 days later, she called back. "Kendall, this isn't a protection plan. This is a transfer. He's asking you to put your house and assets in a company he solely controls. That can't be right. It's all here in black and white. If you sign these, he'll own your house. The power of attorney would give him access to your bank accounts. Has he asked for money?" "Not directly," I said, though the realization was dawning that the entire visit had been leading to exactly that. "Call your bank," Patricia advised. "Check your accounts. And get a lawyer." I did check my accounts. Everything seemed in order. But I also called Martin Schaefer, an attorney I'd done tax work for years ago. He reviewed the documents and confirmed Patricia's assessment. "This is not in your interest, Kendall. This benefits him entirely." I sat with this knowledge for a full day, trying to make sense of it. My son had come to me with an elaborate scheme to take control of my assets. Why not just ask for a loan? Was he in deeper trouble than he'd admitted? Or was this something colder, more calculated? I called Noah, got his voicemail, texted. No response. The silence stretched to 3 days before he finally called back. "Mom, sorry. It's been crazy here. Did you get a chance to review everything?" "I did," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "I have some questions." "Shoot. The structure gives you complete control. I'd be signing over my house to you." He laughed, but it sounded forced. "That's a very simplistic way of looking at it. It's still yours. We're just protecting it from liability." "What liability, Noah? I'm retired. I have no debt. Estate taxes, potential healthcare costs? Mom, this is what I do. Do you trust me or not?" That question, delivered with just the slightest edge of wounded indignation. The same tone he'd used as a teenager when I'd questioned where he'd been until 2 a.m. "I need more time," I said. "We don't have more time. My partners need an answer." "Then the answer is no." Silence on the line. I could almost see him recalculating. "Let's not be hasty," he said finally, voice softening. "I'm coming back up this weekend. We'll go through it together, line by line." He did come back, brought more wine, spoke patiently, explaining everything as if I were a child, rather than someone who had prepared taxes and financial statements for 35 years. But something had changed. I was watching him now, really watching, the way his eyes never quite met mine when he discussed certain details, the forced casualness when he mentioned the power of attorney. "I just don't see why we need to rush," I said. "The opportunity? What opportunity exactly? You've been vague about that." His smile tightened. "It's complicated. Try me. I've handled complicated finances my entire career." And there it was, a flash of something ugly crossing his features, quickly suppressed, but unmistakable. Contempt, as if I were too stupid to understand. "We need these properties consolidated by the end of the month for a major development project," he said. "I can't get into specifics because of confidentiality agreements." I nodded as if considering. "What about your partners? Can I speak with them about this structure?" His hand twitched. "They're extremely busy right now. Just a quick call." "That's not possible at the moment." I smiled and nodded again. But inside, something hardened. In that moment, I knew. There were no partners anymore. No big opportunity. My son was drowning, and he'd decided that pulling me under with him was his way out. "I need another week," I said. He left frustrated, but trying not to show it. As soon as his car pulled away, I called Martin Schaefer again. "I need to know exactly what's happening with my son's business." Within 3 days, Martin had the outlines. Noah's partners had forced him out 6 months earlier. There were allegations of mismanaged funds. His properties were leveraged to the hilt, and creditors were circling. He'd been named in 2 lawsuits. "He's desperate," Martin said. "And desperate people do desperate things." I thanked him and hung up. Then I sat in my quiet house, watching darkness fall over the lake in the distance. The Japanese maples I'd planted when we moved to Vermont had grown tall enough to frame the view. 30 years of growth. 30 years since I'd moved here with a sullen 12-year-old boy, determined to give him stability after his father left us both. I'd failed him somewhere. Or perhaps he'd simply become his father's son despite my efforts. Either way, I knew what I had to do, and it wasn't what he expected. I decided to play along. It wasn't a decision I made lightly. For 3 days after learning the truth about Noah's situation, I barely slept. I kept thinking about all those years, the school conferences I attended alone, the nights I worked late to afford his baseball camp, the college tuition that took me 15 years to pay off. Had he been calculating even then? Taking, never considering what it cost me? No, I couldn't believe that. The little boy who cried when his gerbil died couldn't have been born manipulative. Something had changed him. Perhaps his father's influence during those sporadic weekends. Perhaps the private college where he'd learned to see people as either useful or irrelevant. Perhaps simply the corrosive effect of ambition without principle. Whatever the cause, I now faced a son who saw me as nothing more than a solution to his financial problems. When I called him, I kept my voice carefully uncertain. "Noah, I've been thinking about your proposal." "And?" The eagerness in his voice was almost embarrassing. "I'm still concerned about giving up control, but I understand you need help." "It's not giving up control, Mom. It's strategic restructuring." "If you say so." I paused. "I might be open to transferring my house if you can show me exactly how it protects me." The relief in his sigh was audible. "I'll send you revised paperwork. This is the right decision, Mom. You won't regret it." Over the next 2 weeks, Noah and I engaged in a careful dance. He sent new documents, slightly amended but with the same fundamental problems. I responded with small concerns, specific questions that suggested I was inching toward agreement while giving away nothing. Meanwhile, I was moving deliberately on a parallel track. Martin Schaefer introduced me to Regina Walsh, a forensic accountant who specialized in fraud cases. Together, they helped me understand the full scope of Noah's deception. "He's underwater on all his properties," Regina explained during our meeting in Martin's wood-paneled office. "The banks are closing in. He needs fresh collateral immediately. And he thought I'd just hand over my house," I said. Regina nodded. "People in his position get desperate. They convince themselves it's temporary, that once they turn things around, they'll make it right." "Will he turn things around?" She exchanged glances with Martin. "Based on these numbers? No. If you transfer your assets to him, you'll lose everything." I nodded, absorbing this. What would happen to him if I reported this? Attempted fraud? "Hard to prove fraud at this stage," Martin said. "He could claim he genuinely believed it was a good arrangement for both of you. And he's your son. Do you really want to pursue criminal charges?" "No, I didn't. But I wanted something." "What if I go along with it?" I asked. "Partially, at least." "Absolutely not," Martin said immediately. "Hear me out. What if I agree to the property transfers, but with protections in place he doesn't know about?" Regina looked intrigued. "What kind of protections?" "I don't know yet. That's why I'm asking you." Over the next week, we developed a plan. I would appear to agree to Noah's scheme, but with modifications that would protect me, and ultimately give me leverage when he inevitably tried to cash out. The key insight came from Regina's detailed analysis of Noah's properties. He had 5: 2 small apartment buildings in Providence, a retail space in Hartford, and 2 houses in suburban Boston. All were mortgaged well beyond their current market value. All were managed by shell companies he controlled. "If you become the owner of record, you also take on the liability," Regina warned. "Unless we structure it properly," Martin countered. What followed were hours of complex legal and financial planning. The result was a series of documents that appeared on the surface to give Noah what he wanted. But beneath that surface lay my protection and the mechanism of his eventual comeuppance. When Noah arrived for the weekend we had scheduled to finalize everything, he was visibly relieved. He'd lost weight since I'd last seen him. The confident smile seemed forced. "You've made the right decision, Mom," he said as he unloaded his briefcase at my kitchen table. "I hope so." I placed a cup of coffee before him, black, no sugar, the way he'd taken it since college. "I've had my own lawyer prepare some papers." His smile flickered. "You didn't need to do that. My team has handled everything." "Even so." Humor your cautious old mother. He laughed, tension easing. Always the accountant. Fine, I'll look them over. For the next 3 hours, we reviewed documents. Mine, his, the modified versions I had suggested. He pushed back on some points, conceded others. Throughout it all, I maintained a careful balance. Concerned but cooperative. Questioning, but ultimately yielding. The role of a mother who wants to trust her son but can't quite silence her professional instincts. By evening, we had reached an agreement. 6 properties would be transferred into a newly created limited liability company. My house and his 5 troubled investments. The LLC would provide me protection from his creditors. He would have operational control, but would need my signature for any sale or additional financing. At least, that's what he believed we had agreed to. We should celebrate, he said after the last document was reviewed. He looked years younger. The weight of impending financial disaster temporarily lifted from his shoulders. Yes, we should, I smiled. I've made reservations at Juniper. My treat. At dinner, watching him relax over wine and locally sourced salmon, I felt a strange hollowness. This should have been a genuine moment between mother and son. Instead, it was theater. Him believing he'd secured his salvation at my expense. Me knowing that I was setting a trap he wouldn't see until it was too late. When had we become these people to each other? To family, he said, raising his glass in toast. To family, I echoed, clinking my glass against his. The following morning, we met at my bank, where I had arranged for a notary. Document after document was signed, notarized, witnessed. By noon, it was done. Or so Noah thought. I'll file these today, he said, carefully placing the paperwork in his leather portfolio. The transfers should be recorded by next week. And then what? I asked. Then? He seemed startled by the question. Then we're protected. Your assets, my properties, all secure in the family LLC. And your financial challenges? His smile tightened imperceptibly. All manageable now. This gives me the breathing room I need. I nodded, not trusting myself to say more. We hugged goodbye in the bank parking lot. His embrace felt genuine, the relief of a drowning man who believes he's found solid ground. As I watched him drive away, I wondered if I would ever see him again once he discovered what I'd actually done. 3 days later, the notarized documents were filed. Not by Noah, but by Martin Schaefer. Not the documents Noah believed we had executed, but the ones I had actually signed. The difference was subtle, but profound. And then I waited. I didn't have to wait long. Exactly 8 days after our signing, my phone rang at 6:43 in the morning. What the hell did you do? Noah's voice was raw, as if he'd been shouting. Or drinking. I took a slow sip of my coffee before answering. Good morning to you too, Noah. The paperwork, it's all wrong. The LLC structure, the ownership percentages, the transfer conditions. None of it matches what we agreed to. Doesn't it? I kept my voice neutral. I believe it's exactly what we signed at the bank. No. His voice cracked slightly. No. What we signed gave me operational control. 51% ownership. The ability to manage these properties to maximize our investment. The documents we signed give you operational responsibilities. Yes, but not control. There's a difference. Silence on the line. I could almost hear him processing this. When he spoke again, his voice had cooled, become more calculated. Mom, I don't know what happened here. Maybe there was a miscommunication. Maybe your lawyer made a mistake, but we need to fix this immediately. Why the rush? You said this was about long-term protection. More silence. Then, my partners need... You don't have partners anymore, Noah. You were forced out 6 months ago. The silence this time was absolute. I could hear his breathing change. How did you... I may be retired, but I still have connections. Did you really think I wouldn't investigate before signing away my home? The home that's been my only security since your father left us with nothing but debt and broken promises. This isn't what you think. No. You're not 5 mortgages underwater? You haven't been named in 2 lawsuits for misappropriation of funds? Your creditors aren't looking for fresh collateral to seize? I can explain all of that. I'm sure you can. Your father could always explain too. That silver tongue. That earnest look while he lied straight to my face. I took another sip of coffee. I recognized it the minute you started talking about protecting my assets. Mom, please. I'm in real trouble here. Yes, you are. I need your help. And I gave it. The properties are transferred exactly as promised, but the LLC structure protects me, not you. Your creditors can't touch my house, and you can't sell or refinance any of the properties without my signature. That's not what we agreed to. It's what we signed, I corrected. Check the notarized documents. I heard papers rustling, then a string of profanity that would have earned him a mouthful of soap when he was younger. You switched the documents, he finally said, voice cold. No, Noah. I presented documents. You reviewed them. We had them notarized. If you didn't read carefully enough, that's hardly my fault. You tricked me. Did I? Or did I simply beat you at your own game? More silence. What do you want? He finally asked. The question of a negotiator who knows he's lost the upper hand. Want? Nothing. The arrangement stands as signed. You manage the properties. I hold controlling interest. Any significant decisions require my approval. That doesn't work for me. It doesn't need to. It works for me. My creditors will take everything. They'll take your personal assets, yes. But not the properties in the LLC, not my house. That was the point of this arrangement, wasn't it? Protection? I heard him exhale slowly. When he spoke again, his voice had changed. Softer. The voice he used when he wanted something as a teenager. Mom, I know I approached this wrong. I should have been honest from the beginning, but I was ashamed. I made mistakes, bad investments, trusted the wrong people. I just need a chance to fix things. Please, 20 years ago, even 10 years ago, that voice would have worked on me. The little boy asking for one more chance. The properties stay in the LLC, I said. You can continue managing them. If you turn them around, we can discuss adjusting the arrangement. I need more than that. I need cash now. That wasn't part of our agreement. Mom, they're going to... He stopped abruptly. Going to what, Noah? He didn't answer directly. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't serious. I let the silence stretch, let him feel the weight of it. How much? I finally asked. 200,000, just to get them off my back while I restructure. I almost laughed. No. Mom, please. No, Noah. You've made your bed. They're threatening me. Then perhaps you should speak to the police. His laugh was bitter. You think I can go to the police? You have no idea what kind of people I'm dealing with. That gave me pause. Loan sharks? Organized crime? How deep was he? That sounds like a personal problem, I said, keeping my voice even. One you created yourself. You've always been like this, he said, voice suddenly venomous. Cold, calculating. Dad was right about you. I felt a flicker of genuine anger, quickly suppressed. Your father called me cold when I wouldn't bankroll his gambling. He called me calculating when I insisted on keeping a roof over your head instead of funding his business opportunities. Is that the legacy you've chosen to follow? At least he knew how to take a risk. You've played it safe your entire life. Small practice, small house, small life. And yet here I am, secure in my retirement. And here you are, begging for help. Silence again. When he spoke, his voice had changed once more. Hard now, determined. This isn't over. I believe it is. The papers are filed. The transfers recorded. I'll contest it. Claim fraud, coercion, elder manipulation, whatever it takes. I actually smiled at that, though he couldn't see it. On what grounds? You're the one who brought the proposal to me. You're the one who claimed it was for my protection. Every conversation is documented. Every step witnessed by my attorney and the notary. You'll have a hard time proving I manipulated you. We'll see about that. The line went dead. I placed my phone down carefully and finished my coffee, watching the morning light spread across Lake Champlain. The swell of anger I'd felt began to recede, replaced by something colder, more resolved. Noah had threatened me. My own son had threatened legal action because I wouldn't allow him to sacrifice my security for his mistakes. So be it. I called Martin Schaefer. He's threatening to contest the agreement, I said when he answered. Claims of fraud, coercion, Elder manipulation. Martin's laugh was short and humorless. He's welcome to try. We documented everything precisely to prevent this. Will he have any chance of success? Very little, but litigation is always a risk. He paused. Are you prepared for this to get ugly? It's already ugly, I said. He's my son, and he tried to steal my home. And now? Now we proceed as planned. As I hung up, I felt a strange sense of calm. For years after his father left, I'd tried to be both parents to Noah. I'd worked myself to exhaustion, denied myself any personal life, focused entirely on giving him opportunities. Somewhere along the line, he'd come to see that sacrifice as weakness, as something to be exploited rather than honored. Well, he was about to learn otherwise. The next 3 weeks passed in tense silence. No calls, no texts. Through financial monitoring services Martin had set up, I tracked Noah's increasingly desperate maneuvers. Credit card cash advances, a personal loan at exorbitant interest, the sale of his luxury car. Then came the legal notice. Just as he'd threatened, Noah was suing me for fraud. The lawsuit arrived on a Tuesday. Official paperwork, delivered by a process server who looked uncomfortable when I opened the door. I didn't blame him. Serving legal papers to a gray-haired woman in her 60s probably wasn't what he'd envisioned when he took the job. I accepted the documents with a calm "thank you" that seemed to confuse him further. Inside, I spread the papers across my kitchen table. The lawsuit was exactly as Noah had threatened. Allegations of fraud, misrepresentation, and undue influence. He claimed I had manipulated him into signing documents he hadn't properly reviewed, that I had exploited his trust and our familial relationship. The irony would have been laughable if it weren't so infuriating. I called Martin immediately. "I've been served," I said when he answered. "I know. I received the courtesy copy an hour ago. Kendall, we need to meet." By that afternoon, I was sitting in Martin's office as he and Regina outlined our response strategy. "He's hired Westbrook and Associates," Martin said, his expression grim. "Aggressive firm. Expensive." "Where did he get the money?" I asked. Regina consulted her notes. "Based on what we've been monitoring, he's liquidated almost everything. His stock portfolio, his 401k, even his vacation timeshare. He's all in on this." I nodded, absorbing this. "And our position?" "Strong, but not bulletproof," Martin said. "We documented everything meticulously. You had independent counsel. Me. He had every opportunity to review the documents. The notary will testify to a normal, non-coerced signing. But he's claiming you deliberately misrepresented the documents, that you led him to believe he was signing one thing when it was actually another. That's exactly what he tried to do to me." "I know." Martin leaned forward. "Look, Kendall, family lawsuits are messy. Juries don't like them. They look for ways to reconcile parties rather than pick winners and losers. I'm not interested in reconciliation. I understand that, but we need to be strategic here. Over the next 2 hours, we planned our defense. Not just legal arguments, but narrative. How to present my side of the story. How to counter Noah's inevitable portrayal of himself as a son trying to help his aging mother, only to be tricked by her. He'll play up your professional background," Regina warned. "Paint you as the sophisticated financial expert taking advantage of his trust, while simultaneously claiming I'm too old and confused to manage my own affairs." I raised an eyebrow. "Seems contradictory." "Contradictions don't matter as much as you'd think," Martin said. "People believe what fits their preconceptions. A manipulative mother or a greedy son. The jury will lean toward whichever narrative resonates with their own experiences." By the time I left Martin's office, we had a clear plan. I would appear reasonable, open to mediation, while firmly maintaining that the signed documents reflected our actual agreement. Martin would gather evidence of Noah's financial distress and his pattern of deception leading up to his visit. The discovery phase began 3 weeks later. Noah's attorneys demanded every financial record, every email, every text message between us for the past 5 years. Martin called it a fishing expedition, but complied while making equally extensive demands from Noah's side. What emerged from Noah's records confirmed everything Regina had suspected, and worse. His business hadn't just failed, he'd been systematically moving assets to hide them from his partners before they forced him out. There were questionable transactions, commingled funds, falsified reports to investors. "This is beyond civil liability," Martin said as we reviewed the documents. "There's potential criminal exposure here. Will that help our case?" It explains his desperation, but it doesn't directly address his claims against you. The months crawled by. Depositions, motions, counter-motions. The legal bills mounted, but I had planned for this. What I hadn't planned for was the emotional toll. I found myself lying awake at night, replaying conversations from Noah's childhood. Had I been too strict? Too focused on financial security? Had I somehow taught him that money mattered more than ethics? No. I refused to take responsibility for his choices. He was a grown man who had decided that the easy way out of his troubles was to sacrifice his mother's security. That was on him, not me. In September, 7 months after Noah's initial visit, we found ourselves in mandatory mediation. The court had ordered us to try resolving the case before proceeding to trial. The mediator, a retired judge named Williams, had us in separate rooms. He shuttled between us, carrying offers and counter-offers with dwindling patience. Noah's position: I should surrender control of the LLC, pay his legal fees, and provide an additional $150,000 for his damages. My position: the LLC structure would remain exactly as filed, with no additional payments. By mid-afternoon, Judge Williams entered my room looking exhausted. "Mrs. Turner, I'm going to be blunt. Neither of you is moving toward compromise. At this rate, you'll both spend more on legal fees than the value of the disputed assets. Perhaps my son should have considered that before suing me." Judge Williams sighed. "He claims you tricked him. You claim he tried to trick you. From where I'm sitting, you're both right." I raised an eyebrow but said nothing. "Your son is in serious financial trouble," he continued. "Not just from business failures, but potentially from legal issues that make this dispute look minor by comparison. His choices, his consequences. Even so, he's your son, and I'm his mother, the parent he was willing to leave financially vulnerable to save himself." The judge studied me for a long moment. "Mrs. Turner, I've been mediating family disputes for 15 years. I've seen divorces with less animosity than this. What is it you really want here?" The question caught me off guard. What did I want? Not reconciliation. Not anymore. Not forgiveness. Noah had shown his true character, and it was too late to change that. "Justice," I said finally. "Justice looks different to different people," Judge Williams said. "To your son, justice might be mercy, a second chance. He had many chances. He chose exploitation." The judge nodded slowly. "One last attempt, then. Your son has proposed that the LLC remain as structured, but that you authorize a one-time loan from its assets, $100,000, to help him settle his most pressing debts. In return, he'll dismiss the lawsuit." I almost laughed. "So I should reward him for suing me?" "No. The LLC stays as is. No loans, no settlements." Judge Williams made a note on his pad. "I'll convey your response." 20 minutes later, he returned. "Your son has a counter-proposal. He'll drop the lawsuit if you agree to sell just one of the properties, his choice, and split the proceeds." I shook my head. "No. Mrs. Turner, no. The properties stay in the LLC. He can continue managing them, as agreed. When they return to profitability, we can discuss profit distributions according to ownership percentages. That's the deal he signed." He claims he didn't understand what he was signing. Then he should have read more carefully. Or trusted me less. I met the judge's gaze directly. "My final offer is this. He drops the lawsuit, acknowledges the LLC structure as legitimate, and continues managing the properties. No sales, no loans, no additional funds." The judge sighed heavily. "I'll convey your position, but I don't think he'll accept it. Then we'll see each other in court." An hour later, the mediation was declared at an impasse. As I gathered my belongings, I caught a glimpse of Noah in the hallway. He looked haggard, his once immaculate appearance now rumpled and worn. For a moment, our eyes met. I saw something there. Not remorse exactly, but recognition. He knew he'd lost this round. Later that evening, as I sat on my porch watching twilight settle over Lake Champlain, my phone pinged with a text. "This isn't over." I didn't bother responding. Of course it wasn't over. We both knew that. The court date was set for November 15th, 6 weeks away. I spent those weeks preparing, not just legally, but personally. Something was building inside me, a cold certainty that I hadn't felt in decades. Not since I'd finally gathered the courage to leave Noah's father. My son had chosen his path. Now he would face the consequences. November 15th arrived with the first real snowfall of the season. As I drove to the courthouse, fat flakes swirled through my headlights, accumulating on the windshield faster than the wipers could clear them. The world felt muffled, hushed. Appropriate weather for what I was about to do. Martin met me at the courthouse steps, briefcase in one hand, umbrella in the other. "Ready?" I nodded. More than ready. Inside, the warmth was almost stifling after the crisp morning air. We checked in with the clerk and made our way to courtroom C, where a handful of people already waited. Noah sat at the plaintiff's table with his attorney, a sharp-featured woman in an expensive charcoal suit. He didn't look up as we entered. Judge Howard Mercer presided, a man in his 60s with wire-rimmed glasses and a reputation for no-nonsense efficiency. The preliminary matters went quickly. Introductions, procedural clarifications, a review of the failed mediation. Before opening statements, Judge Mercer said, "I understand the defendant has a motion." Martin stood. "Yes, Your Honor. We move to dismiss based on new evidence that directly contradicts the plaintiff's claims." Noah's attorney, Ms. Westbrook, immediately objected. "Your Honor, this is the first we're hearing of any new evidence. There's been no proper disclosure. The evidence came into our possession yesterday afternoon," Martin countered. "We notified opposing counsel first thing this morning. A courtesy email at 7 a.m. hardly constitutes proper notification." Judge Mercer raised a hand, silencing them both. "I'll hear the motion." "What's this new evidence?" Martin nodded to me, our prearranged signal. I removed a USB drive from my purse and passed it to the bailiff, who delivered it to the judge. "Your Honor, this contains audio recordings of conversations between Mrs. Turner and her son, the plaintiff, Mr. Noah Turner. These recordings demonstrate conclusively that Mr. Turner was fully aware of the terms he was agreeing to." Noah's head snapped up, his eyes meeting mine for the first time. Confusion, then dawning comprehension crossed his features. Ms. Westbrook was still objecting, demanding time to review the recordings, questioning their authenticity, their legality. "Vermont is a one-party consent state for recordings," Martin reminded the court. "Mrs. Turner was a party to all these conversations." Judge Mercer ordered a brief recess to review the recordings in chambers. As he left, Noah leaned across the aisle. "You recorded our conversations?" His voice was low, incredulous. "Every single one," I confirmed. "From your first visit through the signing day." That's smart? Cautious? Yes, I thought so too." His face flushed. "Why would you do that to your own son?" I held his gaze steadily. "Because you're your father's son. And I learned my lesson the first time." Before he could respond, Ms. Westbrook pulled him back, whispering urgently in his ear. I settled back in my chair, composed. The recordings had been my insurance policy from the beginning. The moment Noah had shown up with his too convenient plan to protect my assets, something had clicked inside me. I'd heard those same reassurances before, from his father, seen that same calculated charm. So I'd recorded everything. Every pitch, every explanation, every discussion of terms. And most damning of all, Noah's admission the night before signing. "Look, Mom, I know the paperwork says 51% ownership to you, but we both know that's just on paper. I'll be managing everything, making all the decisions. This is for banks and creditors, not us." When Judge Mercer returned 40 minutes later, his expression gave nothing away. "I've reviewed the recordings," he said, taking his seat. "Ms. Westbrook, do you maintain your objection to their admission?" She hesitated, glancing at Noah, who was now ashen-faced. "We withdraw our objection, Your Honor." A murmur ran through the small gathering of spectators. "Very well. In light of this evidence, does the plaintiff wish to proceed with his case?" Another whispered conference between Noah and his attorney. Finally, she stood. Your Honor, in light of the clarification these recordings provide, my client would like to request a brief adjournment to reassess his position. Judge Mercer nodded. Granted, we'll reconvene at 2 o'clock. As the courtroom emptied, Noah remained seated, staring at the table before him. I gathered my things slowly, deliberately, giving him time to approach if he chose. He did. You planned this from the beginning, he said, standing before me. Not a question, a realization. No, Noah. You planned from the beginning. I simply protected myself. Those recordings, he shook his head. They make me sound dishonest, manipulative, calculating. I closed my purse with a snap. That's because you were all those things. I was desperate. And I was your mother. The person who sacrificed everything for you. The person you were willing to leave financially ruined. He flinched. It wouldn't have come to that. Wouldn't it? Your business partners might disagree. So might your creditors. His voice dropped low. What do you want? To destroy me completely? I studied him. This man who had once been my little boy. Somewhere beneath the desperation and anger, was there anything left of that child? I couldn't see it. What I want, I said carefully, is for you to take responsibility for once in your life. To face your mistakes without trying to shift the burden to someone else. By bankrupting me? By dragging my name through court records? How does that help anyone? It helps me, I said simply. It ensures you never try this again. His laugh was bitter. Message received. You've won. This was never a game, Noah. Then what was it? A lesson. One I wish I hadn't had to teach. He shook his head, turning away. You sound just like him, you know. Dad always said you were cold, calculating. Beneath all that talk about security and responsibility, you just liked having power. The comparison should have hurt. Once it would have. But I'd long since made peace with who I was, and wasn't. Your father said whatever served his purpose at the moment. Another trait you seem to have inherited. I watched him walk away, shoulders slumped in defeat. For a fleeting moment, I felt a twinge of, not regret exactly, recognition, perhaps, of possibilities lost, of the relationship we might have had in another world, where trust hadn't been broken. But we didn't live in that world. When court reconvened at 2, Noah's attorney immediately moved to dismiss the case with prejudice. Judge Mercer granted the motion, adding pointed comments about wasting court resources with meritless claims. I didn't look at Noah as he left the courtroom. There was nothing more to say. Outside, the snow had stopped. The world gleamed white and clean, transformed. Martin walked me to my car. We won, he said. Completely. Yes. I gazed across the parking lot. We did. What happens now? With the properties? The LLC? Noah remains the manager, as agreed. If he does his job properly, the properties may eventually return to profitability. If not, I shrugged. I'll find another manager. And with Noah? The question hung in the crisp air between us. What about my relationship with my only child? Was there anything left to salvage? That's up to him, I said finally, but I won't hold my breath. That evening, alone in my house by the lake, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat watching the moonlight on the snow. My phone remained silent. No calls, no texts, no apologies. I hadn't expected any. What I had expected, what I had planned for and achieved, was justice. Not the court's definition, with its compromises and half measures, but my own. Noah had tried to sacrifice me for his benefit. He had failed. And in failing, he had learned that I wasn't the easy mark he'd thought. That actions had consequences. That some betrayals can't be forgiven. If this makes me cold, so be it. I've survived worse judgments. The snow will melt. The seasons will change. Life will continue. And I will continue with it, secure in my home, in the knowledge that I protected what was mine, even from my own son, especially from my own son. Sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes justice must prevail instead. And sometimes revenge tastes exactly like peace.